Okay, well, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Um, Let me know where you are. Let me know how you are. Let me know what the weather is. Because here at the moment, it's 9 degrees centigrade, and the sky in the east is light. We're getting toward the turning of the seasons, and we're having a great time here. So, is anybody around? And if not, why not? Did you get a note from your mother? Hey, Forza, how you doing? What's the weather like there, brother? Yeah, I've got a lot of things to talk about this time. Hi, Dick. How you doing? How's the weather in Dover? It'll either be windy, sunny, or rainy. One of those. Yeah, it's quite clear out here. I went out and grabbed a coffee from Starbucks. Actually, I didn't grab a coffee. I grabbed a dirty chai latte from Starbucks. Hey, Dog's Dad, how's it going? It's another beautiful summer day in Connecticut. Dick says it's been quite nice in Dover, so that's good. Yeah, lots of good stuff to talk about. I've even got a list. I got quite organized and did a list. So lots of movie stuff. I got a really great quote from Jason Statham I'm going to be sharing. There's some really interesting things coming out soon, which I'm looking forward to. One of the things I have been compiling, and I want to get a bit of a brainstorm about this from people in chat. I've got a big list of really stupid comments that people have put onto the channel and onto the comment section of the channel. And I thought I would share them with you if people are interested in finding out what they are. In fact, I got one this morning, which surprised me. It disheartened me as well because of the content of it. But it's part of the parcel of being a YouTuber. I know there are a number of YouTubers that just don't read the comments. But that engagement with audience is kind of important to me, so I look at all the comments. For Sale wants to see them, definitely. I'll give you the one I got this morning, and this one is pissing me off a lot. Give me a second, I'll bring it up onto my screen, because that one really did get my goat, and I think with this channel in particular, I'm drawing a line in the sand about certain things. And this person was really not being their best self. It came from the video a couple of videos ago where I mentioned that I won't support anything J.K. Rowling does because of transphobia and because she's donating money to anti-transgender causes. So this person who calls himself, and this is kind of ironic, Sane Man 70 says, "Have you read Rowling's, without the apostrophe, original messages? So many people who criticize her are just basing it off what they've read in the press rather than reading her original messages. Rowling is," and here's the really kicker of it, "Rowling is more pro-woman than she is anti-trans. There is a difference." No, there isn't. Trans women are women. And this dickhead who just wants to wave a wand around and wear a cloak and play Quidditch in his pants says that that one's just such a red flag comment. And I answered it. I said, the woman is donating money to TERF causes, trans exclusionary radical feminist causes. She's bad. Trans women are women, you fool. So that's the kind of stuff I'm up against with some of these people. Just, mad people who say the quiet bit out loud and expect everybody to agree with it. No. Peter's here. Hi, Peter. He says the southern constellations are visible here in Adelaide. The magpies are chewing their fat deposits, have no teeth. Hi, Deb. How you doing? Oh, you're not. You're very sick. That's all good. While you're here, Deb, I am mailing off that thing I'm going to mail you off today. Last week was a bit chaotic. I didn't get it done, but I am going to mail it off to you today. So just sit back and wait for it. Adam says, "Yep." Let's hear them. Let's see. Dog's Dad says, "The last chatter brought up the fantasy of rebooting Night Gallery. You mentioned some actor I'm unfamiliar with. I nominate Ian McShane and/or Sarah Paulson. Let's see, who would I get? Definitely, it would have to be David Desmalchin, and I will send you a link. Let's see, to Desmalchin. You can take a look at his his Wikipedia page. Really good. I mean, this guy should be the horror host and everything. He is very, very good at what he does. Here's Desmalchin, and I'll stand by Desmalchin for the person who should be doing a reboot of the Night Gallery. Really a fine actor, knows horror really well. He even wrote horror comic books and still does. And he does a YouTube channel where he interviews celebrities while they're both laying in coffins. And it's hilarious. I think it's called Grave Concerns or something like that. But Desmalchin is the go-to guy. And also he's got black fingernails. If you're going to have somebody rebooting the Night Gallery in the 21st century, you got to have somebody who has black fingernails. I think that's like the secret sauce there. Sorry, I'm just got some ginger flavored gummies here, which are very hard to get out of the packet. What's everyone been watching? I'm saving what I've been watching for the end of the month video. But what's everyone been watching lately? Because I'm curious to find out. I'll give you a if you tell me what you've been watching, it's going to be like you show me yours and I'll show you mine. If you tell me what you've been watching, I'll give you a bit of a recommendation, which I found a very obscure pair of Australian movies, low budget, made about 8 or 10 years ago, but I didn't know anything about it. Dogstad says, tried revisiting Gorath. Yeah, Gorath is just such fun. And it does foreshadow so many much, much later movies. It's amazing. But if at all possible, Dogstad, get the Japanese version. It is fuller. I always found that a bit weird, even back in the 60s and 70s, and even in the 50s. Why would American directors or American producers cut bits from movies? I mean, if you do a side-by-side with the Raymond Burr version of Godzilla with the original Gojira, there's just so much interesting stuff in the original that's not in the cut-down Raymond Burr added version of Godzilla. And it's not unnecessary stuff. It contextualizes the horror and it contextualizes the cultural stuff. And that happened with so many Japanese movies in the 50s and 60s, where the American cut down versions they've got all the edges rubbed off them. Adam says, I watched a couple of really cool 1960 samurai movies on the Arrrou video app. There's an Arrrou video app. The Great Killing and 11 Samurai, historical action, epics, glorious black and white cinematography. Cool. Deb says, Jeff brought home the virus from hell from his office. It has been off work with a chest infection, so we've been watching lots of media. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, I got the pneumonia shot as well as all the other shots I get every year. And I haven't caught anything yet, and I've been wandering around a fair bit. So I always recommend people get the pneumonia shot and the other shots you need to get. Peter's been watching the Naked Vicar Show DVDs, classic Australian TV satire from back in the 70s. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see let's talk about Ross Higgins, Kev Goldsby, and who is the woman in that? I'm just trying to remember. I know her face. But yeah, Naked Figure Show was fun. Dogs Out wants to know how are Mag and the cats. They were fun. The cats just went out for a little while and they come back in now. And they're going to settle down and just take it easy. Because that's what they do. They run manically. When I get up, the cats will run around manically. If they don't have any food in their bowls, I'll put food in their bowls. And then after that, they'll settle down. Nolene Brown. Yep, Peter, it was Nolene Brown in the Naked Figure Show. Yep. Who is also in Walkabout, the Nicholas Roeg film. Nolene Brown's in that. I've also watched Carnival Lady from 1933. Great pre-COVID movie starring Boots Mallory and Anita Faye. Anita Faye steals the show from the start. Excellent print from Poverty Row Studio. Cool. People are really getting into pre-code at the moment. Pre-code is, let's find a really old movie that's a bit saucy and that hasn't been self-censored by movie studios. And there's really a big emphasis on rediscovering those films and just how more grown-up they were than the things that came out after the code, where you had to be incredibly and annoyingly oblique in order to get a certain point across. Deb says, we thought of your videos and rewatched RoboCop. It's great fun. Yeah, it is. RoboCop kind of works because the bad guys are corporations, and that hits 2026's zeitgeist really well. Ian's here. Hi, Ian. A couple of Jack Cardiff movies, A Girl on a Motorcycle and Holiday in Spain. Cool. Is Holiday in Spain the one with Denholm Elliott? Or am I thinking of another film? No, that's The Scent of Fear. I'm thinking of another film. But, yeah. Just so many cool movies that we haven't discovered yet. Ralph says, did we do the Lon Chaney Jr. walking with the Queen reference yet? No, because I try not to steal lines. But speaking of Lon Chaney Jr., we've got this geezer. Who is very cool. And we've also got the other, where's the other one? Here he is. We've got these two little busts. And I've got Darkman. So both of them are cool. Captain Laser says, when did censorship on horror films end in Australia? It's a bit nebulous. They weren't shown a lot, except on late night TV in the 50s and early 60s. There were a little bit, but not very much. And a lot of them were cut after that up to a certain point. It's a little hard to say because sometimes they didn't tell you when they were cutting films and taking out like 5 seconds of so we didn't know they were being censored. Though I did once see a cut of The Vampire Lovers where some guy in a cinema spliced out all the best nude shots, like Ingrid Pitt getting out of a bathtub. And that was all pretty obvious. So it's a very grey area on when did it stop. There are movies that have been refused classification in Australia. I mean, for a long, long, long time, Salo was banned in Australia, and people actually got arrested and fined for doing bootleg copies in very obscure bookshops. And then suddenly, Cinema Cult put out a version of it, and it's in all of the outlet stores. So they don't even tell you when they stop banning and censoring movies. Ralph says, Liam Neeson is my jam. Yeah. I think Darkman's crazily underrated. I think it's a really great movie. Peter says, Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy was cut back around 1976. Wouldn't surprise me. The Liberals were back in. But, yeah, I do like that Dark Man. That's a nice little bust, which I picked up, I think, at Pop Culture or one of those kind of shops, and got it relatively cheaply. They were selling them off. Everybody's got little treasures around the place. Let's see. By the way, we've got the fart gun. If anybody wants to do a super chat, we've got the fart gun still. I did get this, which I wasn't going to show anybody until after I gave a copy of this. Well, I gave another one of these to our niece Cal. We had a birthday party for her on Saturday. Her birthday was earlier, but the family got together on Saturday. And I gave her a One Wish Willow from Obsession. And I have my own One Wish Willow, which is kind of cool. I really like it. And yeah, she's going to put it up on her desk at home because it's fun. And inside, they've got a 3D printed willow thing, which is very cool. I've actually got a couple of spare ones as well. But yeah, that sits up underneath my TV here in the man cave because I really enjoyed the movie Obsession. And never make a wish on a One Wish Willow because it will go wrong. It's like monkey's paw, but in a box. I really should rewatch some Abbott and Costello movies. I do have a couple of the Abbott and Costello meets Universal Monsters movies, and I should rewatch them. But I'll give you another quote, another comment from an unfortunate person whose parents were probably related before they were married on the channel. Let's see. This is very much in tone with a lot of the stuff that I get when I mention American politics. And this is from Bill Miller 2522. Marga internet trolls. Really, dude? I love your channel, but that was just idiotic and uncalled for. I called for it. I'm a Make America Great Again conservative and very proud of it! Exclamation mark. Why don't you just stick to what you do best, commentary on great movies? That's not what I do best, but I can't do what I do best on YouTube. Keep your commentary on American politics to yourself. They are absolutely irrelevant. Said with love and respect. Again, love the channel. By the way, The Creator was an excellent film. So that was kind of mixed because, yes, he's a maggot, but he tried to keep it civilized. So, good on Bill for that. And I replied to her, here's the thing, Bill. The actions of your moron in chief have profound effects around the world. The Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz blockages caused by his capricious chest beating with Iran have an extreme inflationary effect here, and they do, particularly on petrol. His tariffs are messing up with commerce here as well. To think that only Americans get to criticize the convicted rapist who runs your government is naive and incorrect. He's a profoundly damaged and dangerous man, and the sooner you get rid of him, the sooner the third rock from the sun is better off. But I agree, The Creator is an underrated film. Take care. So Bill and I worked around our glitches and came to an agreement about a movie, which is kind of the way I want to go. Yeah, you don't have to agree with me. And in fact, if you did, I'd be a bit worried that you're forming a parasocial relationship. But there's certain things where things that are happening, particularly in North America, are not isolated. They're affecting a lot of people in a lot of places. And at the moment, some of the things going wrong are unnecessary. They're done to enrich wealthy people at the expense mostly of less well-off Americans. And then there's a trickle down to the rest of the world. So I get a lot of that kind of stuff from people saying, don't talk about politics on your channel. Even though you created it from absolutely nothing, even though there are movies that require you to speak about politics in a nuancing way, there are some people that don't want you to do that and they think they've got a right to tell you not to. If you disagree with me, I'm happy for you to disagree with me. If you tell me what to do with my business, just so you feel a little comforted by not hearing anything that disagrees with you, That is a different matter. And that's how I'm approaching things at the moment. Back in the day, I would have been a lot more vicious than I am, even with the comments. But these days, I realize that, how will I put this? Some people have drunk the Kool-Aid and don't know that they've drunk the Kool-Aid. And there are good people who follow bad politicians. Deb says, that sounds like a far more respectful exchange. It was. And the thing is that just imagine we had social media back in, say, 1939. Let's just draw a line at 1939. I'm sure there were Germans who didn't want to keep hearing about invasions of Czechoslovakia and stuff like that. And there were people who were very wary of disagreeing with very powerful instrumentalities in their own countries. I think that's a little bit of what we're going. I'm not saying that the USA is Nazi Germany. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying there's a similarity in the fact that a lot of people are very, very scared of being outspoken because of the chance that it may affect their employment, it may affect them socially, it may affect them legally. And I'm seeing a lot more of that with some people in the USA. And that's kind of interesting, but it's also very, very scary for them. Dogstate says, Terry, you're the host of the channel. Of course, you have to be a good host. I'll be a good host. I mean, I love sharing movies and I love sharing information about movies. And I love pointing people towards the good stuff. But I am who I am. And occasionally, when I do talk about politics, particularly Australian politics, I'm choosing to share a little more of me than a normal movie channel does. And I'm okay with that. It means I'm comfortable enough with my audience that I'm willing to take a chance of them seeing the rough edges, in a sense. And I really appreciate the fact that I feel comfortable enough with not only the people who come on the live stream and on chat, but with my audience in general to be able to share that stuff. I am. Forsyth says that MAGA guy sounds like a creep. Yeah, the first one was. But I get like 5 to 10 of these a week, depending on what I've spoken about on the channel. And there was only one that really hit me because it attacked Sally. It didn't attack me, but it attacked Sally and her appearance. And that one really pissed me off and triggered me. But apart from that, I'll just counterpunch, or if they're polite and reasonable, I'll open a dialogue about things. But there are some very damaged people out there who enjoy going onto people's YouTube channels and getting surgically nasty with them. Forsyth says, the bumper sticker on my car says resist with an image of a raised fist next to it. Good. Comrade. What's tonight's theme, says Adam. Tonight's theme is pretty much stuff that's going on in the world. I've got a lot of subjects to cover, but they don't hold together thematically. So I'll put the werewolf up just as a little bit of a hook for this this one. I'll give you this really great quote I found from Jason Statham, which I really enjoyed. It's from 9 years ago, back in April 2017. And Statham did a rare interview for something called the Jim and Sam Show. And someone asked him, does he ever get offers for parts that are totally different from his normal films? And Statham said, "A mathematician who is going through a bit of divorce. No, I don't get those offers." He said, and here's the tagline quote, which I really love. Excuse me for a second. Statham talking about his career. "I only want to do things I think I can do a good job at, and I think I'll be good at that. I just, I'm not an actor really. I used to work in jewelry and pinch jewelry on the streets. I was a sportsman for years. I'm not really some thespian who can adapt and chameleon himself into different roles. I just got into this by being in the right place at the right time. I got plucked from obscurity into the movie industry. It's not like I spent years honing how to do different accents or working on my craft. I accept what I'm good at and just try to go with the flow in that direction." And that's a very different but a very interesting approach to a career in movies. Statham knows what he does well. He punches people. He does one-liners. He's tough. He's a tough guy, a movie actor, and he does seem to be very grounded and very aware of that. And he doesn't try to be Dwayne Johnson doing the Smashing Machine so he can get an Oscar nomination. He's not deluded in that way. So props to Jason Statham for that, having that self-awareness and that awareness of his persona in movies and his career, and acknowledging that he got into movies almost by happenstance because Guy Ritchie needed someone in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. And I like that awareness of who he is and what he does. Dog's Dad says, "Don't change. Your audience appreciates your organic, genuine, honest opinions and comments." Thank you. And Adam says, "A man has to know his limitations." Yeah. Deb says, no one gets to diss anyone on the basis of their appearance. Absolutely. And that is a great quote from Statham. I think having that intelligence and awareness of what you do well, and then try to do it as well as you possibly can, I can respect that. And I will go and see Statham movies at the cinema. And if I can't, I will see them on streaming. But Statham's got such a long career he has never starred in a movie that didn't get a theatrical release. His movies don't go to streaming first. They always get bums on seats in an auditorium viewings because people like what he does. And props and respect to him for that. I've seen a couple of early movies he did where he tried to essay an American accent unsuccessfully. But I like what Statham does. He's Charles Bronson without the asshole edge. For Sale says, "I have a copy of Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels on DVD. Great fun." Yeah, I like Guy Ritchie movies in general. Fountain of Youth, the one he did recently, I didn't like. But things like the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare and Man from U.N.C.L.E. and those kind of movies I really dig. And Operation Fortune, Rue de Guerre with Statham was a great movie. Came out during lockdowns, so it didn't get any business. But I really like Operation Fortune. It's just such a fun action flick. Dog's Dad says, "Statham doesn't seem to age either. I recently rewatched Ghost of Mars, made about 20 years ago. No change." Yeah, that was one of his really early ones. I mean, he's worked with John Carpenter, and he was very much a secondary character who gets killed off. But Statham, having that awareness of who he is, he's going to be doing codger exploitation movies for the next 20, 30 years because he is comfortable doing what he does to the best of his ability. KNC, hi. No interest in Statham films, but that's an impressive self-awareness. Yeah, that's the point. That self-awareness and that lack of, and that really strong and accurate bullshit filter is what I like about Statham. It's, yeah. And also, from what I understand, and I've done a shallow dive, He's got a nice home in California. He's got kids and a wife who he's had for a long time. He's very grounded in that way too. He's a family man who goes away and does weird things every now and then. And I really respect that. I think there are so many people who are either were damaged and became very big in acting and directing and whatever, like they become very famous. And that glitch in their early life is intensified and mutated in a bad way by their wealth and their celebrity. And inevitably it leads either to a crash or to them being very wealthy assholes. And then there are people like Statham, who is grounded probably by his family and the love of his family and having that as a balance to the movie stuff, who maintains his sanity while he is very, very famous. And props to him for that. Jimmy says his best film was In the Name of the King and even has Burt Reynolds. No, it isn't. His best film is Operation Fortune Rue de Guerre. It's got Aubrey Plaza. It's got Hugh Grant in a really good role. It's got Channing Tatum. It's just so much fun. Dogstat says, what about Liam Neeson? Liam Neeson is doing codgesploitation. In fact, he did one down at Altona Pier. A movie that's coming out soon called The Mongoose, where I was going to show the new pier at Altona for my other channel, the Travel One. And I couldn't because they were making a fucking Liam Neeson movie on the pier. And he was driving a Mustang up and down Altona Pier. They're okay, but I don't think Neeson, for all of his virtues, has as strong and as winning a persona as Jason Statham does. He plays trouble older guys with Botox. Kayan says Vinnie Jones probably gets the films Jason Statham passes on. Not now. Apparently, Vinnie Jones is an asshole, and his career has duck dived into obscurity. He never had the charm of a Statham. He was always the guy you avoided at a pub, Vinnie Jones, and that's not a winning recipe for longevity in cinema. Adam says, do I think Neeson was so shattered by Schindler's List he decided to do stupid films? I don't know him well enough to know, but stupid films at a certain stage in a certain type of career are where the bucks are. So it's like Hal Holbrook said in All the President's Men, follow the money. If you want to see the arc of someone's career, follow the money. If they start doing movies that you think, that's not his kind of film, they're doing it for the money because either they have financial troubles or their career is tanking, and so they've got to do a 180 or a 370 or whatever. And or they were famous, but they're not very good at their job. So if you suddenly see somebody going from young leading man to mediocre action films, it's because they stopped being quite as pretty and they pivoted to action roles. Dogstad says, speaking of shark movies, we won't. Will there be another Meg sequel with Statham? It depends on the Chinese company that runs. Is it Legendary Pictures? I think it might be Legendary Pictures who owns that franchise. And they would have to pay Statham a lot of money for another Meg movie because the previous ones were so successful that he'd want a cut of it. Yeah, with Neeson, there was also the tragedy with his wife as well. So there is that that pivots a career as well. You draw back, you look after your family, and then go back into things. And the industry's changed or you've changed. And so you end up doing a different kind of film. I've got nothing against Neeson movies apart from when it stops me going down Altona Pier. And he also did another one which is supposed to be set in the Himalayas, and they filmed it in rural Victoria. They went up to Walhalla, which is the most mountainous little town in Victoria, and decorated it to look like Nepal. KN says, I'm sure a lot of these actors stopped caring at some point in their careers. I'm not sure they stopped caring, because even to do a dumb meatball action film requires focus. You've got to be in the moment. You've got to do the fight choreography to a certain extent. You can't just phone it in. Yeah, you can phone in an action role when you can phone in a character role when you're sitting in an office wearing a suit and banging your hand on a desk. But action cinema requires, to a certain extent, dedication. You've got to be there. You've got to at least essay the action before the stuntman takes over. And I think to do that, you've got to care to a certain extent. The good example of what not to do in that is, of course, Steven Seagal, who phones it in doing action roles, and it's fucking obvious every time he does it. Which is why you won't see him at the Oscars anytime soon. Doug says some VTuber profile 2026 flops and mentioned Statham's last movie. His one-note character seems to run out of steam. Which one was it? I did see the one when he was on the Scottish Island, and that was kind of cool. He played off. There was a young actress that he kind of took under his wing. The character he took under his wing when her father got killed, and Statham played both parts of that, like the gruff tenderness and the gruff regard he had for this kid he had to look after when the bad guys who were basically rogue CIA agents. Surprise, surprise. He did a good job of that kind of gruff tenderness. Being a family man, it would have come natural to him. But I've got no problem with the most recent Statham movies I've seen. I think they're great fun. Captain Laser says, Mel Brooks, who has many comedies I love, Spaceballs is one of them. Thoughts on the sequel? Why not? He's 100 years old. He's a World War II veteran. He was at the Battle of the Bulge. Mel Brooks can do whatever the fuck he likes as far as I'm concerned. He is the GOAT when it comes to the second half of the 20th century in comedy. And haven't got a problem with it. What you should do is look at movies that don't get enough love in Mel Brooks' filmography. Stuff like The 12 Chairs. The 12 Chairs is a marvelous movie that nobody talks about. And I know recently Mel Brooks curated a film festival of comedy films. And the only movie of his own he put in there was The 12 Chairs, which I love. I haven't got a copy of it. I really should try to find a copy of The 12 Chairs. But it is a great, less known Mel Brooks film. Yeah, he is a national treasure. He's a global treasure. And Adam says, I couldn't get through 12 Chairs, but I'm willing to rewatch. I think it should, because we change over time and we may regard a movie more highly with more life experience behind us. Yep, Mel Brooks created Get Smart, amongst other things. Yep, he also produced The Fly. He produced The Elephant Man with David Lynch. He's the guy that greenlit David Lynch to be the director for The Elephant Man, because he said, you're weird, you're our guy. So the career of David Lynch is directly attributable to Mel Brooks, which seems an odd bedfellows kind of situation. But he knew what was good and what wasn't. And still does, I assume, unless his marbles are slowly leaking out of his ears. Mel Brooks is a legend. No, he's not a legend. He's real. Let's see what else I've got on my list of lists. The no AI policy on the channel. where I promised not to use AI in my videos, even though I was only using it for visual things. Yeah, it's gone well. Got some good responses to it. Some people said they didn't mind that I did it, but I really didn't sit comfortably with me, and it felt like I was doing something a bit sneaky when I was doing the intros with a little bit of AI stuff in the transitions. It felt like I wasn't being totally upfront and real with the people who watch my videos. So I'm sitting more comfortably with myself over the last 2 weeks since I stopped doing it. And I'm having fun finding ways to do the same things I did when I was using AI transitions and AI short videos of about 5 seconds without doing that. And what the AI thing has done for me is it's encouraged my creativity. If I'm not going to use AI in the videos at all, which I'm not, how do I still get a bit of a visual pop on the screen for the audience? So it's kind of triggered that creativity in me. AI says Adam says AI can get in the sea. Some people like going to the sea. But Kane says you have to make your own costumes. No, I won't. I can do it with stuff I've got around the man cave. I've got so much weird and wonderful stuff in the man cave that if I just apply myself, I can do it. Dog's Dad says YouTube AI movies seem to show up my feed. Watch one with a famous TV and film actors. It was disturbing and amazing at the same time. What's real anymore? This channel is, as much as anything that gets transmitted as electrons, can be real. This one is real. Captain Laser says the AI intros didn't bother me, but I really love the toy collectibles show. That's the thing. Given that I'm not doing them anymore, what's an alternative that will still engage an audience? And I do think about this stuff a lot. I mean, I make bullet lists before I do videos so I can talk off the cuff about them. I don't normally script things, but I've got a list of things on a bullet point that I'll talk about. And sometimes I don't even need to reference the bullet points because I write them by hand in notepads. And the act of writing them down lodges them in my memory so I can just talk ad hoc about things, having written them down and having memorized them by writing them down. Adam says, Terry is real. Well, you ask Sally, she may disagree with you at times, but I try to be, and I try to do things as well as I can. And one of the other reasons I didn't want to do AI, and this is a very personal reason, it felt like I wasn't learning new things by using AI. Yes, you learn how to do the prompts, which is an incredibly minor skill at best. But part of doing the channel and part of the joy of doing the channel for me is learning new skills. Learning how to edit videos is a non-trivial task. And, like, do you cut on the beat or do you cut a moment on the beat before the beat? It's there's a lot of stuff there. You might notice that occasionally when I want to emphasize a point, for about 3 seconds, I'll do a slow zoom in on the camera, which I can do with the software. Stuff like that, those little tricks and those little bits of business. I'm constantly learning new things to do with that. And I watch a lot of YouTube. And part of what I do when I'm watching YouTube is work out best practices and work out the grammar of video and the grammar of doing video on YouTube. What is something that somebody does on YouTube that's very effective, but doesn't really cost anything? And it's just something to be aware of. If I'm doing my travel videos, what's something I can do on that will make things pop? What kind of music do I put underlining hyperlapses? And should I do a voiceover as I'm hyperlapsing as well? There's just a lot of learning here, and it's great. I know there are a lot of people who are resistant to learning. I know a number of them. And as they get toward my age and older, if you're resistant to learning and you don't like learning, and there are people who don't like learning, I find they lose something each time I see them. There's a little less of them there, but the people who are engaged with the world, and the people who love learning, and the people who groove on novelty and new things they haven't seen before, they retain so much better as they get into their older years. And I love them for that. I respect them for that. And I want to be that. I don't want to lose my marbles because I got too lazy to learn new things. Dogstad says, you know you're in trouble if Luna is portrayed in AI. Luna is too hyper real to ever be effective as AI. She is who she is. And even when she eventually dies, which unfortunately our pets do, resurrecting her with AI would feel like a betrayal of a cat I love. Captain Laser says, I'd like to see intros with the posters of the original release if that's not difficult. I'll put them on the thumbnail normally, but sometime in the videos, usually there'll be a poster of original releases in the video if I'm talking about a specific movie. So I can do that, but because I want the intros to pop, I'll try to do something a little unexpected with them, like the little robots dancing and things like that. Deb says, I'm suspicious of people who don't want to learn new things. I know a number of them. For instance, my mother-in-law, Annette, who is really, really nice in a lot of ways, refuses to learn how to use anything on the internet. She doesn't trust it because who knows why. But it makes it more difficult for her to function day to day as we are now. And both Peter, her husband, and Sal and I have offered to teach her, but she just doesn't want to learn it. And I think I don't like that for her. And also, there are a couple of friends on social media who I've known since Jesus was playing Cowboys and Indians, who resist every change in the world because of technology changing, because of society evolving, because of all that shit. They get angry and resist change of any kind, even when it's of enormous potential benefit to them. They resist it instinctively and very strongly. And I don't really like that. Adam says the brain gets tired. Yeah, we have this thing called sleep. We knit the raveled sleeve of care with sleep. And sleep is what stops brains getting tired. If you can get more sleep, your brain resets wonderfully. Four Stars says it's important to keep your mind sharp, especially if as your age. For me, it's reading. Absolutely, reading works for that as well. Adam says the older clients at my job refuse to learn the internet components that will make both of our lives easier. Absolutely. The only thing I would resist in that kind of thing is using AI in business, because I know a fair bit about AI. I read a lot about it. And AI is a yes man. AI tells you what it thinks you want to hear. And AI hallucinations make things up because they think you want to hear them. That's a dangerous path in a business place. It's a dangerous path in a personal world as well. For your main advisor and this immensely powerful tool you're using, if it lies to you and if it just sucks up to you and tells you what it thinks you want to know, rather than factually putting things together, that's incredibly dangerous. And Dogstad says people who are adverse to learning, inquisitive, or resistant to change, unfortunately, describes what's going on here in the US. Absolutely. We're getting a little bit of it here with various conservative political parties. I mean, One Nation Party, Pauline Hanson's party, wants to go back to a monoculture, not realizing that Australia never had a monoculture. It's just her family and her suburb that had a monoculture back in the day. And even where I grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, There were Italian families, there were Greek families, there were people from the Balkans. There were all sorts of people blending in, and people were curious about the Chinese particularly. There was a big Chinese diaspora population in the parts of Sydney I lived in, and they were always really friendly people. They knew things we didn't know. There was esoteric knowledge in a Chinese restaurant. How do you cook that? How do you use a wok? Whoever thought of putting ginger or garlic together and making it taste good? All that kind of stuff was new in the 60s when I was growing up. But we loved it, and I was fortunate enough that my mum's family really was drawn to that kind of novelty. Whenever we had a little bit of money, and that wasn't very often when I was a kid, Mum used to take us to a Chinese restaurant, and we get not necessarily the anglicized Chinese dishes, but the most exotic things they had on the menu. And that was always a revelation. And when I was growing up and as a teenager, and when I started going to restaurants and cafes, I had this rule of always ordering the weirdest thing I could afford on each menu. So stuff that I wouldn't normally order, the unusual little bits and pieces. Some of them I didn't like at all, but I did like some of them, and my taste in food expanded enormously. Things like olives. Olives weren't a natural part of the white Australian diet in the 60s when I was growing up. But I learned to like olives and exotic cheeses and pate and cheap caviar and all that kind of stuff because it's interesting. It tastes good. Adam says, I'm an insomniac. Have you tried melatonin? Melatonin does work for insomnia pretty well. I can't use it because I'm on some medications that counteract melatonin, but melatonin is good. And Peter says we must adapt and change with the times, but you don't have to embrace all changes. Pick what's going to be a benefit to you. Absolutely. And that's what it is too. You learn if you're continually learning and adapting to change. You learn where the landmines are. You learn where the stuff that's not going to last is. And the AI bubble is going to burst. It can't not burst. Even though the most powerful people on the planet are pushing it, and that has a flow-on effect on things like graphics cards for computers. And I rely on a graphics card to be able to produce 4K video. And I've got a graphics card. Graphics card prices they're 4 times what they were because graphics cards are being bought up by places doing data centers because essentially graphics cards are very powerful calculation additions to a computer. Ralph says, same kind of cognitive dissonance as the US, the white people are in it, are out against the immigrants. Yeah. I'll tell you a story from when I was a little kid. I was like 8, and the Italian kid across the street invited me over to dinner. And they had Italian food. We had beans, we had kale, we had really good spaghetti, al dente. And my mum was talking to neighborhood women because this was the time when people would walk down to the shops and they'd chat with each other. And there were these middle-aged women. And one of the women said to my mother, don't let your kid eat in an Italian household. They'll poison him. I don't know where that came from. This woman genuinely said that Italian people poison children. And I remember that because it was shocking to me. I didn't believe it because they'd been incredibly welcoming and hospitable to me. And it was lovely for that reason. But there were people who had such an ingrained racism and xenophobia that they could sprout that kind of shit unchallenged. Never bought it. We also see it as this thing. There was this kid I went to school with, his name was Tabia Fattore. And yeah, you take your sandwiches for lunch. And he'd have sandwiches with mortadella and really interesting Italian ingredients, crusty Italian loaves, fantastic food. And he was sick of them. So we used to swap sandwiches. I'd give him the Vegemite and cheese. He'd give me beautiful mortadella on crusty Italian bread. and we'd swap every now and then because we wanted something different. So, I mean, multiculturalism is important because your taste buds get bored. Or at least that's one of the reasons why it is. And I do like diverse foods. I'm very big on diverse foods. Is there a backstory to my hat, says Dogze? There we go. Hiroshima Toyo Carp. My favorite baseball team in Hiroshima. Sal and I went to Japan in 2019, and we spent most of the 2 weeks and change that we were there in Tokyo, in Shinjuku. But we did spend 5 days in Osaka, which I love. I think I like Osaka better than I like Tokyo. And because the Shinkansens, the bullet trains, are so fast, we had the ability to get up early, take a bullet train 300 kilometers to Hiroshima, and still get back in time for bed because their trains are that fast. 300 kilometers an hour, zoom. So we went to Hiroshima, beautiful city. We went to Ground Zero, the municipal building that was Ground Zero at Hiroshima. We went through there. We went through the Peace Gardens. That building is in Gorath. Is it Gorath? No, it's in Frankenstein Conquers the World, otherwise known as Frankenstein versus Baragon. So there was a scene in a kaiju movie that I've actually been to. So we went there, very sobering and very standing beneath a point where a nuclear weapon went off is something unprecedented in my life. So we went there, we went around there, we took a cab back to the station because we couldn't figure out the buses. And at the station, they had a big outlet store for the local baseball team, Hiroshima Toyo Carp. And they had a baseball cap that was on sale, and that's this one. And I bought it. I've actually got some badges and other bits for the team. But this one I bought about 3 kilometers from a place where a nuclear weapon went off. And it's one of my favorite hats. Adam says, I hate how in the UK that immigrants coming across the channel are referred to as small boat problem. So dehumanizing. Of course it is. Because people fear the other. Whereas if they were in a similar situation as those people, they'd do the same thing. Captain Lazy says, hold it, I thought you didn't like sports movies. I don't. I just like this one team because they look like a fun bunch of guys. The people in the shop are fine, and it was the best hat I could find with Hiroshima on it. And it's a good little cap, this one. And it is fading slightly, so across the brim there. It's fading, but I'm going to wear it until it wears out because it's a memory. It's a memory of one of the most extraordinary places I've ever been to. Slight pivot of subject. I did a video, which I'm still editing for the other channel, where I travelled the longest bus route in Melbourne. I've previously done a video where I travelled the longest bus route in Melbourne, I thought. And then somebody in the comments went, no, the 901's longer. And the 901 goes from Frankston down around the bay all the way to the airport, which is in the northwest of things. 115 kilometre local bus route with 234 bus stops. And I did that last week, and I'm still editing that video. That was kind of wild because for $2.50, it was a 4.5 hour trip going all the way around the edge of Melbourne. Magic in a weird way. But one thing I did learn was local bus seats are not designed to comfort your bum for 4.5 hours. My bum got very sore on those rough, short distance bus seats. But that video will be out next week, so look forward to that one. Dogstay said, I was in Shinjuku last fall. Yep, amazing. Even chatted with you on a cruise ship close to where Infant Island is located. I did pick up a Godzilla figurine and -1 coffee cup. Cool. Yeah, I actually went to Toho Studios, but there's nothing there for a tourist apart from a couple of bronze statues. And to do it, I had to take like 3 trains and then walk about 2.5 kilometers down a hill. But yeah, Shinjuku I like. Kabukicho I like. Golden Guy I really like. The little back alley bars in Golden Guy I really love. But yeah, it's great to travel to places like Japan. Though Japan's getting a little adverse to tourists because so many asshole tourists are going there and just ruining things for everybody. Deb's out of here, got to make breakfast. Take care, look after yourself, and keep your liquids up. Can have another one of these ginger logs because they're good. Let's see. I've been watching some slasher movies I didn't know about, and I'm going to be doing an unboxing for them because they came from Umbrella Entertainment. The Hatchet series, which I knew nothing about, with a monster man called Victor Crowley who attacks people in the Louisiana bayou with a hatchet. Have fun with that. I'll talk to you more about those on Wednesday's video this week. But that's a regular for me. Apparently, Spider-Man Brand New Day has made over $2 billion at the moment. Which is amazing. People say superhero fatigue. Spider-Man movie suddenly makes $2 billion. There may be more to it than what people think. Adam says, Hatchet one of them being fun. Yeah, Hatchet's fun. Dogstad says, is there pushback to tourists in Australia like other places? Not so much because we're a bit diverse. People go to Sydney, they go to Melbourne, they go to Brisbane and the Gold Coast, they go to Uluru. Few people go to Darwin because they don't know how good it is. Because we're not as geographically condensed as places like Venice and Rome and parts of Spain, we don't have as much problems with tourists. We do get tourists who get lost. We do get tourists who ignore the signs and go swimming where there are crocodiles. That problem takes care of itself. But we don't mind. One of the interesting things is we're getting a bit more tourism because people are reluctant to go to the USA for reasons that are in your local news. We get we get some American tourists. We get a lot of Asian tourists as well. We get Japanese tourists. We get Chinese tourists. We get all over the waterfront. But we normally I'm not in the parts that are touristy. But Sal and I are going down to the Ocean Road at the beginning of next month, and there are a lot of tourists that head down there, and they'll pull their buses over on a 2-lane highway to look at koalas and things like that. But it's not particularly a hassle. Yeah, it sounds like an Eli Roth film. No, Hatchet has a self-awareness that Eli Roth movies don't. They have a humour to them, and they have a very consistent mythology. But yeah, I mean, tourists, they're always going to be idiots. There are always going to be people who drink too much in an environment they're not aware of the nuances of. And you get that in a lot of places where people come from a country that has a drinking culture, the way England has. And they're not aware how strong the beer is sometimes. But tourists tend to cluster in very specific areas. And when Sal and I have traveled, what we tend to do is go outside those areas and just wander off by ourselves and find the grooviest stuff. Adam, Australian tourists going wrong. I don't tend to hang around with Australian tourists. I think there are a lot of dickheads out there. There are a lot of people who self-medicate in various ways. Crowded pubs aren't my thing. Pubs themselves aren't particularly my thing, unless I'm sitting down for a pub meal in a country town. So I don't tend to cluster around where they are. But half the time, I'm very wary of, and I think down on people who go to foreign places and go to the Australian bar in Bali or an Australian pub somewhere that's not Australia, or somewhere where they know they can get local food that they have. I find that such a waste of time and a waste of opportunity to go to cultural microclimates where you get the same stuff you get at home. I think that defeats the purpose of travel. Dogstone says that off border security program pretty much paints Asians and generally non-white people, in particular with particular scrutiny to the point of almost saying stay away. You got to remember, you might not know this, that border security show is run by the Seven Network, which is owned by a billionaire called Kerry Stokes. It's xenophobic as fuck. It's catering to a certain audience. And I don't watch those shows. I don't tend to watch linear television these days. I pick and choose my media from various online sources. But I won't watch linear media because I don't watch things to be annoyed by them. And to a large extent, if for some reason I'm watching linear media, I get annoyed by it. Like I'll go over to the in-laws' place and they're watching Jag. And it's so bloody obvious that that whole series, all the time it was on, is a propaganda for the American military complex. It's simplistic and has no nuance to it. It's PR for the American military, and I find it really uninteresting because of that. You gotta, with particularly things like reality television shows like border security, you got to work out for yourself whose purposes does this serve. What it tends to do is reinforce racism and serve the purposes of white Australia. And I hate that. I find that really repugnant. What else have we got on the list? Anybody seen the Avengers Doomsday trailer with Robert Downey Jr. playing Doctor Doom? I really want to see it. I really want to see the movie because I always watch Marvel movies anyway. But this one's got whole universes colliding with each other. Adam says, yeah, I don't watch a lot of action movies and shows I used to because I see the propaganda, the propaganda now. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that I think is good is media training at schools. Teaching kids how propaganda works in the media. And I think that's such an important skill now because people can, with certain skills, people can manipulate other people to believe almost anything. Adam says, what's the next film I'm looking forward to other than Doomsday? I want to see Godzilla Minus Zero, is it? Yeah, I want to see that because I like a good Gojira movie, and that's definitely a good Gojira movie. There's a New Zealand film which Umbrella have put out in film festivals called Mum, I'm Alien Pregnant, about a New Zealand woman who gets knocked up by an alien. And it's got body horror and comedy in it. It's got a very funny trailer. and I want to see Mum, I'm Alien Pregnant, because there are times when you just need a body horror comedy. And this one looks like it's a lot of fun. And it's also about women's body autonomy. There's a whole bunch of interesting other things that it's doing there. Yeah, it is a great title, Adam. And those smaller films I want to see. I did see two Australian films I didn't know anything about. And they're called Skinford. And the second one's another Skinford movie. They are on Prime Video here in Australia, and I found out about them, oddly enough, from a censored copy on YouTube. And then I found out that they were in Prime Video and I could watch them. Basically, the story is, it starts with this guy called Skinny Skinford, who's a minor crim. And there's a guy with a gun, and Skinny is digging his own grave because this guy's got a gun on him. And he starts digging, and then he digs to a certain point, and there's a human hand, a woman's hand, sticking out of the ground. And it's moving. And he pulls this woman out of the ground. And then the guy with the gun shoots him. But nothing happens. He shoots him and it doesn't kill him. The woman he pulled out of the ground is immortal. And if you're touching her, you cannot be harmed. So they kill the guy with the gun, run to his car, get in the car, find out that it's been rigged with a bomb. The car blows up and they walk away naked because the clothes have been blown off. And that's just the start of the movie, where he meets this immortal woman who's now 90 years old but looks 22. And they've got to save themselves from a whole bunch of criminals, including his own father, who is dying of cancer and wants to find the secret of immortality. Very low budget, very weird little films, but they're kind of fun as well. Filmed in Sydney. As I said, knew nothing about them. They didn't get any traction at all, but they're kind of fun. Adam says, I reckon Krieger's Resident Evil is one to watch. Yeah, Zach Krieger's stuff is always interesting. Dog says, as I get older, film genres that were interesting to me back in the day, not so much anymore. For example, the Star Trek franchise. Do I feel similar films to watch? I'm not that big on post-apocalyptic movies now because I know I wouldn't survive them. Back when I was young and less reliant on medication, I kind of could fantasize a little bit about post-apocalyptic rebuild the world scenario. But I'm not fond of them now because I'm going, no, I'll be dead. And I don't like any movies where I could think that I'd be dead. But Star Trek I like. Star Trek Strange New Worlds I like, even though it's goofy as fuck. I do like what they're doing with that series in weird ways. And the thing is, they're willing to be silly. They're willing to be very dark at times. There's a haunted spaceship episode in the new season that's really, really good. And the first episode of the new season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they find out there were Martians 65 million years ago. And there was a fifth planet in the solar system 65 million years ago. And Mars was being invaded by the creatures from the fifth planet. It's called Valles Marineris. Really interesting addition to the Star Trek chronology. And it works. They cram so much into an hour and change in that first episode. And I like the cast. I like the ensemble. I like the vibe of it. And it works for me. Dog says, Strange New World is strange. A puppet episode. Yeah, they did a Muppet episode where there was a transporter malfunction and some of the crew came back as Muppets. That stuff, I'm good for that. I think a silly episode now and then doesn't hurt. I think one of the problems with something that's 60 years old now is the tendency to take itself too seriously. And that's always a death knell for any franchise. Self-importance. Thinking you're the bee's knees, rather than going, what can we do that's different? What can we do that's a bit gonzo? What can we do to expand this universe in strange ways? Yeah, dogs, that the Haunted House episode is creepy, and they don't actually get a resolution to it. They pass it on to the part of Starfleet that deals with inexplicable phenomena, like the X-Files of Starfleet. But it's never quite resolved, and that makes it even better. Adam says, what about remaking OG Star Trek? Such great writing. Yeah. Strange New Worlds does it. It does. James Kirk and Spock are characters in Strange New Worlds before Kirk got the Enterprise and while Pike still has it. And they are basically remaking OG Star Trek and updating it, filling in the backstory before Kirk became the captain of the Enterprise and how Kirk became captain. Kirk's only a minor character in it, but Spock's in there, Chapel's in there, Dr. Mabenga, Pike, number one. All of them get fleshed out backstories, and it makes for a very interesting series. And Anson Mount playing Captain Pike is fantastic. He's the kind of leader in any circumstance that you want to have because he's not up himself. I did see the second series of Sugar, a series on Apple Plus starring, hang on a sec, starring Colin Farrell, which is really interesting. And you've got to see the first series to understand why it's interesting. But the second season works well. And the second season opens up the mythology in some very interesting ways. Hopefully, it'll get a third season. So it's some of the best cinematography I've seen in a streaming series. Set around Los Angeles. And LA is shot just so wonderfully cinematically. And there are lots of little Easter eggs of old classic films noir. It's a private eye show, but it's a private eye show with a difference. And Colin Farrell, I think, is really good in the role. And you get some fantastic guest stars as well. I think Apple is starting to do some of the best science fiction around on a streaming series and things like that. They just seem to know the genre very well. And there's just so many good things coming out of them, stuff like Pluribus. I'm waiting for a second season of Pluribus. Adam says, in a few weekends, the first three Star Trek films, the first three Halloween movies are playing the same nights, one show only. I have a terrible choice to make since I can't make both. True. In Star Trek 4, why do they make a glass fish tank instead of having a metal tank? It looks better. Cinema's about visual. But Star Trek 4 is definitely one of the lesser ones. Go back, save the whales, send an ecological message, and have all of the Starfleet crew act like dickheads on 1980s America. But yeah, Strange New Worlds I really like. Let's see what else we've got on the list. Did anybody see that Umbrella Entertainment's putting out an Alejandro Jodorowsky box set of all his movies, including Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary about the Dune movie anime? So you got El Topo, you got the Holy Mount, you got all of his work in one box set that's coming out. That's going to be a real banger. That's going to be like when they put out the Hanukkah box set, when they put out the Universal Monsters box set. Putting out an Alejandro Jodorowsky box set. I'm there for that. I have requested a review copy of it. Hopefully they'll send it to me. But that one's pretty good. Adam says, whatever happened to the Income movie? I'm not familiar with that one. I'm sure you could look it up and find out, but I'm not sure what that is. Can't cover everything, I suppose. Waititi was supposed to do. I don't like Waititi. I think he's self-indulgent. I mean, Thor, Love and Thunder was one of the worst MCU movies because they let Taika Waititi have his say, and he turned it into, hey, let's get everybody's kids in this movie, and let's be self-indulgent. And I'm not good with that. But I know he's making a couple of other films now. Four Stars says the original captain of the Enterprise was Darren McGavin in Riverboat. I said that on a live stream about 6 months ago. Sorry, but I did. That was a good trivia question I've been using for like 2 decades, and it pisses off Star Trek fans enormously. But yeah, I've actually got some episodes. I had some episodes of Riverboat on DVD. On VHS, which I got rid of when I got rid of most of my VHS things. One of the interesting things about the Hatchet box set I just got for the Hatchet movies, all 4 of them, they also give you a VHS copy of the first Hatchet movie. Check out the graphic novel Ian Carl Mobius and Hodorowski. Okay, cool. I'm not sure. I'm sure it might have been in the box set somewhere. There'd be a documentary, part of one of the documentaries. But I'm looking forward to diving into that one when it comes out. It's one of those big chunky box sets I really like. But the Melbourne International Film Festival just finished too. I don't go to them because I can't afford the ticket prices, and then they give me freebies. But apparently there were some interesting cult films that'll come out later. Dog says, what's the health of physical media in the age of streaming? I think there are younger people, like people in their 20s, are really digging physical media now because they'll have movies that they really loved when they were like 10 years ago when they were kids. And they see them on streaming services, Netflix and Prime and all the rest of them. And suddenly they ain't there anymore. And these people are pissed off about that because these are movies they love. And they go, okay, maybe I should buy myself a Blu-ray player or a 4K player and buy a copy of that movie, and then I can own it forever. That is really becoming a big thing. And there are any number of kind of millennial movie fans who are starting to discover that the people who own streaming services aren't your friend. You're their product. And so it's there's a big resurgence on physical media. And places here in Melbourne like Play do gangbuster business with imports of physical media. And if you have a look at the Disconnected YouTube channel that Ryan Verrill runs, every month there's a shit ton of interesting physical media coming out. There are things that are coming out on 4K in America where you go, why would you do that piece of shit movie on 4K? But somebody loves it and they will make money on it. Do they still manufacture new DVD players for sale? I'm sure there are a few places around. AliExpress will sell you one. I'm sure Amazon still has them as well. But for me, if I'm going to buy anything else, if one of mine crashes, I'm going to try to find like a region-free Blu-ray player or a region-free 4K player because they play DVDs anyway. So, and then I don't have to worry about if I buy a DVD player, this is a Blu-ray, I'll have to put it in a different machine. I don't have to worry about that if you just automatically buy a Blu-ray player. Captain Lazy says, Hatchet movies were fun. I only seen the first 2, 3 and 4 any good. I've seen 3, I haven't seen 4 yet. 3's kind of fun. They're all fun and low key, but I haven't seen 4 yet. I'm going to watch 4 either today or tomorrow morning because I'm reviewing that box set for Umbrella. And they're all on 4K in the box set too. They got 4K and Blu-ray. And the movies I've seen so far, the first 3 Hatchet movies look great. No notes about how they look. Our 4K player is able to play Blu-rays and DVDs every day. Absolutely. If you want to get a 4K player and you've got the money to do it, get it. I mean, 4K players do require 2 HDMI cables hooked to the back of the TV because there's just such a data bandwidth going through them that your normal cable just won't cut it. It requires 2 of them. But they'll play a Blu-ray or a DVD. You'd have to make sure they were region unlocked, but that is the case. Give me a second. I'm just going to go to the men's room, and I'll be back in like a minute and a half. Thanks for indulging me there. Yeah. Oh, wow, Christian, thank you. Do I watch many Indian movies? I want to watch more than I do, but my local cinema does show them, and occasionally I'll dip into an Indian movie. And Christian, you get the fart gun for the super chat. Thank you very much, mate. Yeah, I drank one too many coffees. That's what it was. Nature calls. Yep. I can't hear any splashing. And wash my hands. I used hand sanitizer, so it's all good, Dick. And my dick's not that dirty. But yeah, back to 4K players and Blu-ray players. In the main living room where I've got the 4K TV, I've got my 4K player hooked up to the TV. I've also got a region-free Blu-ray player. So if I'm playing any region-locked Blu-rays or DVDs from the US or other places, I know which machine to slip them into, and I can just watch them both on the same TV. I suppose it seemed like I joined at the right time. Yeah, you did. I'd rather go and do what I've got to do than squirm. Let's put it that way. But yeah, it's I like having different formats and things. And I've also here, I've got a TV over there, which isn't particularly large. It's only like this big. It's slightly bigger than the screen you can see here. And it's got a PlayStation 4 that I inherited from Sal when she got the PlayStation 5. And the PlayStation 4 plays Blu-rays as well. So if I can't be bothered going in the other room, I can watch something on the screen here. Let me see if I can turn the camera around and show you. Give me a second. There it is there. So I can watch stuff on there if I so choose. But yeah, I mean, I love having a choice on where I watch things as well. And occasionally I'll go out on the couch and watch things out there. And normally Jill the cat is there on the couch with me. And she'll watch horror movies in particular and French films. She loves French films. So Jill and I will sit down and watch a movie. I'll usually have a notepad with me and make notes on it for the channel. It's a comfortable life in that way. But yeah, I've got 2 things to review this week. One of which is the Hatchet box set, and the other one is a Japanese action film with Ken Takakura in it. So I've just got to watch those as well. The cat loves French movies. Yeah, who doesn't? Yeah, Jill likes a little bit of Agnes Varda and a little bit of Jean-Luc Godard. She doesn't mind Breathless, but she's more a fan of a Bon de Part. No Italian horror. She likes horror movies. I haven't tried her on Italian horror movies, but she definitely likes American slasher movies. That's definitely in her wheelhouse, and she'll watch it because of the interesting stuff on screen. She might like a bit of Mario Bava because of the bright colors. She might want to watch that. I'll have to try on a bit of Mario Bava Gialli at some stage, but at this time, it's horror movies for the most part. Hey, Ryan's here. The disconnected man himself is here. Hi, Ryan. Hope you're doing well, friend. Yeah, I am. We're doing fine here. Just shooting the shit for another half an hour, and then I'm off to explore the world again. But what Hammer films? What about Hammer films, cats? I did watch a couple of Hammer films. Watched a couple of the Frankenstein movies when I reviewed them, and Jill hung around for those. I think she's very much a Peter Cushing rather than a Christopher Lee kind of cat, and she enjoys them for that reason. But yeah, it's by the way, people should subscribe to the Disconnected and see what Ryan and his numerous guests are doing as far as new physical media is concerned, and also supporting Antenna Releasing, his company. But yeah, Jill does like watching the movies, and occasionally when I'm here cuddling Luna and I'm watching stuff on here, she'll watch movies. She likes action films. Luna likes action films. Jill the cat likes horror movies. They're very different cats. But Luna will watch action films, particularly with outdoor scenes. And occasionally she'll watch stuff like Daredevil Born Again. She likes a little bit of superhero stuff mixed in with the action films as well. Because I've trained my cats well. I've raised them correctly. And they like the right kinds of films. But yeah, actually, there is a Hammer film I should be watching. I've got it on the coffee table. Curse of the Werewolf with Oliver Reed. I want to revisit that one and do it for a video. But I've locked myself for next week into doing War of the Gargantuas, a Toho movie with a giant Frankenstein in it. Because I've already done Frankenstein Conquers the World, so now I've got to do War of the Gargantuas with Russ Tamblyn in it. So I'm going to be doing that next. For Sale says, when's the next Terry Travels? It'll probably be out in about 3 days. I'm just having trouble with the edit because it was 4.5 hours of travel on a bus, and I've got to edit it in such a way that it's not dull. I'm about halfway through the edit, but I'm also thinking of doing a bit of voiceover for it, so it's going to take just that little bit longer to do. But nonetheless, I'm going to do it, and I've got to work out which world I want to conquer next, because I've done walking train lines twice. I walked from here to the city, and I walked the Upfield train line. I'm thinking of doing the Sandringham train line along the bay. But yeah, I'm not sure where Terry Travels is going next. It may be going down to southeastern Victoria. Adam says, Oliver Reed was always good playing a cad. I think it's where Hannibal Brooks goes wrong. He's too nice. Yeah, I kind of like Hannibal Brooks. I think that's a charming little film and a bit of fun. But it's definitely playing against type for Oliver Reed. It's such a tragedy that alcoholism got him, because he was an incredibly talented actor. But getting on the piss just had its hooks in him. And that's part of that kind of drinking culture they have in England in particular, where it's seen as a masculine thing to do. And it's not something I ever found attractive, partly because I used to spend Saturday afternoons and evenings sitting outside a pub waiting for my father. So I never really got hooked into that pub culture thing. Apparently, Oliver Reed fell in love with the elephant. I'm sure he would have had to stand on a step stool or a ladder. Elephants are good. When I was a kid, you used to be able to feed the elephants at Sydney Zoo. They give you a bag of peanuts. And the elephants were so close, their trunks had come through the bars of the cages. and you can actually feed elephants and feel their trunks. But they don't do that now because somebody would obviously graffiti the elephant. But yeah, I've got a lot of respect for elephants. I like large animals. I like Clydesdale horses. I've ridden on a Clydesdale. Actually, I've ridden on 3 Clydesdales, come to think of it. But I like Clydesdales. I like large animals in particular. Sal doesn't like animals that are bigger than her. She gets really shitted off with any animal that's bigger than her. But for me, one of the things I learned from having cats and things like is if an animal likes you and really likes you and cozies up to you and things like that, there's something it says about your character if the animal likes you. And yes, you may be a shit in other parts of your life, but as far as respecting animals, there's something good about you. And I'm reminded of that every time one of the cats comes up and wants a cuddle or just a pat or wants to be fed. Having the trust of animals is something I'm really appreciating more the older I get, because the respect that you show the animal is reflected back to you. What else have I got to show here? I've got some things around here I was going to show. I'm going to rewatch this. I watched it when I got the copy a few weeks ago. Visitor Q I'm going to rewatch because it's such a sick movie. Takashi Miike and Visitor Q. This is the New Wave releasing copy of it. I'm getting into sick Japanese cinema at the moment, amongst other things. And I've usually got 5 irons in the fire when it comes to those kind of things. But sick Japanese cinema is fun. I went and saw None in Ropel when it was shown at the backlot. Yeah. And also the other thing I'm getting into is Hong Kong horror movies of the 1980s, because the Sure Shot collections keep coming out from imprint. And there's some really weird movies in those. Have I ever seen Cold Fish? No, I haven't. Yeah, Adam has seen Visitor Q for 25 years. Remember it being very odd. Yes, it is very odd. Your memory is not failing you there. But I like the Sure Shot collections because there are things like Black Magic, where a magic potion is made out of some kind of potion thing and a lady's pubic hair. And it makes her lactate as part of the magic spell. It's just weird shit. Like Visitor Q, there's a lot of lactation going on in weird Asian horror movies of a certain vintage. But which is not, you don't see a lot of that in American horror movies, really. I think definitely Hong Kong and Japan have a lock-in on lactation in horror movies. America doesn't, for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe they were bottle fed. All the horror movie directors in America were fed by bottles. But for some reason, I saw this cluster of Hong Kong and Japanese horror movies where women lactating are a big part of the plot. Milk is demonic in the East, says Anna. Okay. I would have thought that it was just, well, the reason they think milk is demonic in the East is there's a higher proportion of people who are lactose intolerant. So, you drink milk and you shit your guts out. That's going to make you think that it's demonic, even if it isn't. And the other thing is, nothing's demonic. People, give me a sec. Forsyth says, I'm a fan of J-horror, especially the ones with malicious ghosts in them. Yeah, you get that a lot in Hong Kong horror as well. Here's one thing that pisses me off on YouTube, just speaking tangential to what we were speaking about there. People who say places are haunted are con artists or idiots. There's no other explanation. They're either conning you by saying something's haunted to get you to watch the video, or they're an idiot that thinks things can be haunted. I've been to some very sketchy places and I've never seen or felt a ghost. I felt a draft, but haunted stuff, if people say, I'm not going there, that place is haunted, I always kind of look down on them a little bit and go, what the fuck are you talking about? Because nothing is haunted. I've felt places that have a sad vibe about them. When I went to Alcatraz, the idea that people were executed there and people were imprisoned there under egregious circumstances, that vibe was very dark for me. And like I went to Ground Zero in Hiroshima, that place has a very sad vibe for me as well. But I've never felt anything was haunted. I think the history of a place, because we know the history of a place, can darken your experience of being there. But I've never thought anything was haunted. Adam says, I felt a haunting. You felt a draft? Yeah, because that's what it was. I was in the catacombs underneath Edinburgh, because of course I was. Sally has taken me on 3 ghost tours. And because I'm a good husband, I went on them. Went to one in Edinburgh, one in Hobart in Tasmania, and one here in Melbourne in Pentridge Jail. Never felt a bloody thing. The Edinburgh one was the best because they walk you through the underground catacombs where the body snatchers transported the bodies from the graveyards to medical schools back in the 18th and 19th century. But at the end of that one, they give you a dram of whiskey, and it's like single malt. That's the good part of the ghost tour. I think, you've suffered through this ghost tour and all this bullshit we've told you, mixed in with a nice bit of history, and now we're going to give you a whiskey. That is the ghost tour to do. Peter's here. Get my gun. Thank you, Peter, for the super chat. You ready? I'll do the 007. Appreciate that, mate. Adam says, yes, that's exactly why I hate the Conjuring movies. The couple were proven con artists, and now they had their reputation laundered by studio soft-selling horror. I haven't watched the Conjuring movies, or the Insidious ones. I like the Insidious ones more as an idea because I like Lynn Shay as an actor. I kind of like the idea of a woman who's 82 and is still a scream queen in horror movies. Got much love and respect for her for that, and she's done very, very well from it and is a really good actress. But the haunting I like because it builds up a vibe really well, and the innocence I like because that builds up a vibe very well. Well, the Haunting of Hell House, I kind of like some haunting movies, but I never for a second thought they were anything but fiction. Adam says, I saw a 70s door handle turn slowly and ran to open the door and no one was there. Somebody runs very fast or there's something wrong with the door. Occam's razor is always a good indicator of what's going on. And, I just don't buy the stuff. The Hatchet movies that I just watched, and I'm not going to talk much more about them because I'm doing the review on Wednesday. The Hatchet movies are interesting because they build up a supernatural mythology, which sounds plausible in a weird way. And the history of the character is more nuanced than most of the shit you get in horror movies. The creature, Victor Crowley, in the movie, is as much a victim as he is somebody who tears people apart with his bare hands. Yeah, your thing's your thing. It's not my thing as well. But for me, I like horror movies. I like haunting movies, but I have a sharp line between them and reality. And for me, that works differently than it does for other people. And I'm fine with that. But let's see what time we got. 15 minutes left. Let me see what I've got on the list I haven't spoken about, because there's inevitably something. I kind of like the fact that Umbrella are putting out it's Imprint. Imprint are putting out a 4K of Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. I watched that about a year ago, and it's mildly entertaining. The only plot thing I don't like about Time Cop is it's one of those time travel movies, and there are a number of them that the guy goes through hell and beats the bad guys and goes through all sorts of stuff, and his wife is no longer dead. And in that sense of a plot line, the wife then becomes a prize, a human being, and their life becomes a prize for the hero. And I think that's kind of lazy screenwriting, because one of the things I learned when I was learning how to be an editor, which I did very briefly in the early 1980s, female characters are prizes to be won in any good narrative, whether it's a book or a movie or a story or anything like that. Making a female character a prize to be attained is such a shitty thing to do. It's really off. And there are so many movies and books and other works of fiction that make the woman's existence to be there as a prize for the hero to win or for the hero to save. And yes, it does go back to that guy going to the underworld to save his girlfriend, the one that Orpheus, because Black Orpheus is based on him, Orpheus and Eurydice, that kind of stuff. It goes back as far as that, but too many people use that as a lazy way of trying to farm emotional engagement in a movie or a series, and I don't particularly like that because I'm aware of it as lazy writing, and Time Cop has that as well. It's a bit like Bill Murray being a shit for most of Groundhog Day, and eventually he becomes a better person, leaving aside all the egregious shit he did, conning women into sleeping with him by repeatedly doing the cycle and telling them what they want to hear. Leave all that aside, because eventually he falls in love with Annie McDowell. There's some very sus aspects to Groundhog Day that people tend to hand wave away because they like the idea of a romantic ending. You can disagree if you like, but I'm kind of being aware of that stuff. And the reason I like being aware of those kind of weak plot tropes in movies is when I see a movie that dodges that and doesn't do that and has an opportunity in the plot to do that kind of narrative where women are the prize, and they don't do it, I really like that. I like people who subvert expectations and subvert those toxic tropes in movies. I've got a lot of respect for people who do that. There's a short story Harlan Ellison once wrote about a guy who rescues a girl. He's a truck driver. He rescues a girl, like in her late teens, from some bad guys and does some heroic stuff and does Jason Statham action movie stuff. And at the end, the girl wants to sleep with him because she's the reward he gets for doing all the heroic stuff. And the truck driver says, "No, lady, I'm a married man. I rescued you because you needed rescuing, but you don't need to sleep with me to reward me. I'm going to drop you off where I need to drop you off. And I'm going to get some sleep, go home to my wife. And that's it." So right at the end of the story, Ellison subverts the expectation of, yep, I'm going to sleep with the chick because I've earned it. And I really like that. And it's something that a lot of movies don't do. Harlan Ellison, the Joe Pesci of the literary set. I'm not sure. I know he had undiagnosed bipolar disorder, and that may have been part of all the glitches he had. And there were times when he wasn't a good person, but he was very aware of plot mechanics and um, doing things. He got in trouble at one stage for writing a story where Jesus was a vampire because Jesus got crucified and buried for 3 days and came back. And the natural supposition there is he was the first vampire. A lot of people didn't like that story. I wonder why. But yeah, I love plots that subvert expectations. Things like Obsession. And I'm going to do a slight spoiler for that, where the guy wishes that the girl he's lusting after loves him more than anything in the world, and gets that literally true. But because this is a monkey paw story, what happens is the persona that loves him more than anything in the world isn't actually that woman. It's a layer over her. And the real person is watching from behind that facade and can't do anything about it. And is seeing this guy essentially assault her because of this wish, and sees this demonic persona who becomes so obsessed with Bear that she does egregious things to so many people. And yet the real self is behind the scenes watching all of these horrors and these abuses unfold. That's really brilliant writing. That's not only the monkey paw where things go wrong, that's empowering in a monstrous way the female character who suddenly turns into somebody that loves the guy Bear more than anything in the world. And that's taken to extremes. That's incredibly good plot writing, especially for a guy in his early 20s. It's just so much. There's just so much interesting stuff coming out now from different viewpoints that I really appreciate it. Christian says, there's a story by Stephen Baxter, I think, where Jesus is a vampire the Vatican keeps locked in a dungeon. I think there's a lot more people that the Vatican should keep locked up in dungeons. And we often know who they are. But yeah, it's a perfectly plausible explanation. If you're going to believe in supernatural, there are certain things that are inevitable that somebody's going to write about them. And the idea of Jesus rising from his grave, or his tomb at least, 3 days later, does sound a lot like vampires. There's also that story that was in, I'm not sure if it was a Twilight Zone or a Outer Limits episode, probably a Twilight Zone, where there's somebody finds a man in prison, wrongfully imprisoned in a prison. And what he doesn't know, it's the devil, and the people have captured and imprisoned the devil. And he has let the devil loose upon the world once more. There's that kind of stuff goes on too. Sometimes you gotta not take the temptation. The naked lady gives you an apple. You say thank you and just put it aside. And then go back to living in your garden with the naked lady. The Howling Man, Dogstad, thank you. The Howling Man. Yeah, and again, that's a kind of Pandora story, isn't it? Where you open the box and all the evils of the world flood out. And the last thing sitting in the box is hope. Yeah, it is one of the best in the series. It works well. The reveal's pretty good. And it doesn't outstay its welcome, so the audience has time to think it through and work out what it is. Some of those series like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, the lengths are perfect for the kind of story it's telling. So you don't go, okay, why is this doing this for this long? Yeah, the short time scale allows people to experience the story without having too long to analyze it before they finish watching it. But yeah, I'd like, as I've said before on the channel, and I'll say it again, I love the fact that young filmmakers and young creative people are starting to really find themselves. And they're using YouTube as a training ground. Like the Raka Raka guys, the Philippine brothers, making horror movies here in Australia. Even Carradine has a good role in that Twilight Zone episode. Says Dog's Dad. Yeah, it's I'm so optimistic for the future of particularly genre cinema because there are just so many people doing so much good work, and it's not just old guys. I mean, I think the biggest curse you can put on a filmmaker is they have the career of Steven Spielberg, where in your 80s you remake something you did 30 or 40 years ago in order to try to keep relevance, and you make Disclosure Day with your light bulb headed aliens and the same vibe that was in the 1980s but doesn't sit well with the cultural and technological changes of the 21st century. That kind of stuff is a curse. Being Steven Spielberg is a curse. Being Martin Scorsese is different. Yeah, he's done some unsuccessful things, but what he's done more than anything else, and I think the thing long term that Scorsese is going to be known for is those documentaries he did, giving people context and telling people about films, the ones he did on American cinema and the ones he did on Italian cinema. I think Scorsese I respect most as a teacher. Yes, he's a filmmaker, and yes, he's made enormously powerful movies like Raging Bull and like Taxi Driver and like a whole bunch of other stuff. Yes, he did make New York, New York as well. But for me, okay, Dog's Dad, take care, look after yourself. But for me, I think Scorsese is going to be known well into the late 21st century as a teacher of film. Adam says, I think the millennial leap has warped some people. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yeah, I think I'm always wary of anything a billionaire does. I've come to that realization that billionaires who do pretty much anything, there's an enormously self-serving aspect to what they do, and there's not that generosity that poorer people do. I mean, the people who are the most charitable are usually the poorest because they've lived it and they know it. And the people who are least charitable are the most wealthy. And that's an interesting phenomenon as well. Anything people want to say last minute, because we've got about 2 minutes left and I don't want anyone to feel left out here. So is there anything you want to say in this last brief, ephemeral 2 minutes of the live stream? Start typing. Here's your chance. This is what we say, call to action. We covered so much stuff in this one too. It's been widely varied. If you had 2.8 billion, what would you do with it? I would renovate old cinemas around Australia and open them again and have them show the movies that I wanted to show people. And I would make sure that the staff in the cinemas were people who really needed a job and who were really passionate about film. That's one of the things I do. And also finance some films and give some new people financing to make the films they want to do. That's what I do. And Dick says, have a good rest of the day. Bedtime's calling. Okay. Thanks, Dick and Carol. Would you make a film? No, I'm not organised enough to make a film. I don't have the skill set to be a director or to be a filmmaker in any way because I'm disorganised at best. And I know my limitations. I know what I'm passionate about, but I also know my limitations. And filmmaking will be too much like hard work for me. I'll make my own things. I'll make my little documentaries about traveling. I'll make my YouTube videos. But getting organised with a bunch of other people to do something wouldn't be as much fun for me. So I would rather, if I had the 2.8 billion, I'd also build a really good YouTube studio. And I'd make multiple studios so other people could use them. Yeah, Mr. Remand, would you want to make a film? What would it be? I wouldn't. I mean, someone asked me this a while back, and I said lesbian porn, but I was being facetious. I want to see what other stories people have got to tell. I want to see other people's stories. I don't want to see my own. And I respect people who can do that, but I can't. We really must knock that naughty clock that says it's time to go. It goes so fast, our time has passed, and we must end our show. Thanks to everybody who's been part of this live stream. It's been a good one. We've had fun. I've had a toilet break, talked about movies, talked about all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. So listen, look after yourselves, and I'll see you in 2 weeks in the live stream. Wednesday, we've got a video coming out. Saturday, we've got a video coming out. Monday, we've got a video coming out. All of that stuff. So listen, look after yourselves. Stay safe. Stay well. Look after the people around you, whether you love them or not. And I'll catch you next time.